There are hundreds of thousands of families. And the question they're asking, Mr. Speaker, is this. Why should a family on £45,000, where one person stays at home, lose their child benefit, £1,000, £2,000, £3,000 a year, but a family on £80,000, where both partners in the couple are working, should keep their child benefit? That doesn't strike people as fair. It doesn't strike me as fair. Does it strike the Prime Minister as fair?
What I believe is fair is asking better-off people to make a contribution to reducing the deficit. Let me try putting it this way to the honourable gentleman. Think about it like this. There are thousands of people in his constituency earning 1/6 of what he earns. Through their taxes, they will be paying for his child benefit. Is that really fair?
The truth is, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister has no defence of this policy. He cannot explain to families up and down the country why they're going to sustain this loss. And let's be honest, the Chancellor sits there. This policy has been a shambles from day one. The rest of the Cabinet knew nothing about it. The local government secretary said he found out from the media that it was being announced. The Children's Minister, I can't see him, he went on the run because he was too scared to defend the policy. I bet the Prime Minister wishes the BBC blackout had gone ahead. It was such a shambles, his conference. On child benefit, Mr. Speaker, isn't it time the Prime Minister had the grown-up sense to admit this? He's got it wrong. He's made the wrong decision. He should tell middle-income families up and down Britain he'll think again.
The right honourable gentleman has suddenly discovered middle-income families. We're now hearing about the squeezed middle. Who is it who squeezed the middle? Who is it who doubled the council tax? Who put up tax 122 times? Who taxed the pensions, the petrol, the marriages, the mortgages? And suddenly, having done all this to middle-income earners, they want to stand up for middle-income earners. It is a completely transparent political strategy to cover up the inconvenient truth that he was put where he was by the trade union movement.
Ed Miliband and David Cameron debating just one of the government's budget cuts.
Estimate remains the one set out by the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility. They have forecast a reduction in headcount of 490,000 over the spending review period. Now, let's be clear, that is over 4 years, not overnight. And much of it will be achieved through natural turnover by leaving posts unfilled as they become vacant. Estimates suggest a turnover rate of over 8% in the public sector. But yes, there will be some redundancies. The state pension age for men and women will reach 66 by the year 2020. This will involve a gradual increase in the state pension age from 65 to 66, starting in 2018. My right honourable friend, the Work and Pension Secretary, is setting out proposals with my support to replace all working age benefits and tax credits with a simple universal credit. The guiding rule will be this: it will always pay to work. Those who get work will be better off than those who don't. It represents the greatest reform to our welfare state for a generation. I have taken the difficult decision to remove child benefit from families with a higher rate taxpayer. I wish it were otherwise, but I simply cannot ask those watching this earning just £15,000 or £30,000 a year to go on paying the child benefit of those earning £50,000 or £100,000 a year. Total health spending will rise each year over and above inflation. This year we are spending £104 billion on healthcare, capital and current combined. By the end of 4 years, we'll be spending £114 billion. We can afford this in part because of the decisions on welfare I have just announced. There will be a real increase in the money for schools, not just next year or the year after, as the last government once promised, but for each of the next 4 years.
It's our firm belief, Mr. Speaker, that the rush to cut the deficit endangers the recovery and reduces the prospects for employment in the short term and for prosperity in the longer term. We believe we can and should sustain a more gradual reduction, securing growth. I don't believe that the Chancellor or the Prime Minister sufficiently understand the worries and concerns of families up and down this country, and I think those worries will have multiplied considerably as a result of his statement today.
How does he possibly imagine, after his statement today, that a real terms direct cut to the Scottish bloc of around £4 billion can do anything other than weaken the ability of Scotland to recover from the difficult economic times?
Well, over the next few weeks, the implications of those cuts became clear, and of fiercest anger. The government wants to cap the maximum claim at £400 a week, but opponents say it will force some out of their homes, particularly in inner cities. The Lib Dem leader and Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg reacted angrily to one MP's claim that the change would amount to social cleansing.
It is estimated that 200,000 people will be forced out of major metropolitan areas as a result of the government's niggardly proposals on welfare reform, which will turn London into Paris, with the poor consigned to the outer ring. That's the equivalent of 3 parliamentary constituencies, according to his desiccated calculating machine of a bill. Would it not be iniquitous if, on top of being socially engineered and sociologically cleansed out of London, the poor were also disenfranchised by his bill? How does he propose to make electoral provision for these displaced people?
Mr. Speaker, look, we all indulge in a bit of hyperbole, but I have to say to him, quite seriously, to refer to cleansing will be deeply offensive to people who have witnessed ethnic cleansing in other parts of the world. It is an outrageous way of describing. No, I'll tell him exactly what we are doing. No, what we are doing is that saying for people who receive housing benefit, it is perfectly reasonable for the government to say that it won't hand out more in housing benefit than people who go out to work, pay their taxes, play by the rules, will do when they look for housing themselves. We are simply suggesting there should be a cap for family homes of 4 bedrooms of £400 a week. That is £21,000 a year. Does he really think it's wrong? Does he really think it's wrong for people who can't afford to live privately in those areas, that the state should subsidise people to the tune of more than £21,000? I don't think so.
Henry Smith.
And then there was the impact on council services. Town halls across England faced cuts in 2011 of almost 10% in their core central government funding, the biggest reduction for a generation. Unions have warned that will mean thousands of job losses, including among frontline staff. But ministers say cuts should be made in back office staff, and the deal is progressive and fair.